Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepytime Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Do you find your mind spinning and churning? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems. The ones that you can't solve right now and will probably be easier to solve well rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns, but slowly letting go and drifting into the deep night. I got another very nice review on Apple Podcasts. Like I think I said before, I'm not really one who promotes people leave reviews. I do always enjoy getting them, but they don't really help me reach new listeners. I would, if you're going to spend your energy doing one thing or the other, I'd prefer you sharing it on Facebook or to people you know who struggle to sleep. But if you are ever inclined to leave an Apple Podcasts review, I do appreciate them, and I'm always happy to share them when they pop up. So I got a 5-star earlier this month. It says, delightful. Drift away to the world of dreams with this podcast. I find the host's voice very relaxing and can definitely see this as a useful resource if I'm having trouble sleeping. Subscribe and listen now. So thank you very much to Katie and Oti for that review. Also got something a little bit unexpected. I had got a pop-up on my phone this morning before work, and it was a comment on Castbox, which I didn't realize was a feature that it had. I actually have a solid number of my listenership is on Castbox, so hi to everybody there. The comment is from Olga, who commented on one of my recent episodes. She said she liked the story, but she didn't like the long intro. Now, this is a comment I have had before from people, and it is a valid issue, and I know not everybody likes them. But ultimately, there are a lot of listeners that I have for whom the long intro is an important part of the show. It's a part of their process. So I don't see myself stopping them anytime soon. So I'm sorry for anybody who doesn't like it, including to you, Olga. But this is also why I provide timestamps. So it's very easy for you just take a peek at your phone or device, hit the link quickly, and it'll pop you straight to the story. So again, thank you for taking the time. I do appreciate it. I see your point, but ultimately there are other people who have a different opinion, and so I go in that direction, because also I'm replicating what worked for me in other shows. Anyone who's been following along on my Patreon a little bit will see that I'm starting to build up quite a nice little archive of episodes. A reminder that at the $5 level, you get your name listed on my website, and you also get intro-free episodes, or rather story-only episodes. So anybody who doesn't like listening to the intros, you can get rid of those for $5 a month by listening to the ones that come on Patreon, and I have one for every episode I've released so far, as well as episodes that still have intros, but they're a little bit shorter because this whole promotional section is cut out. So a couple of options there if you got a $5 a month lying around. And I even have quite a nice reward for the $1 level. I started doing weekly bonus minisodes to release on Radio Public, because I'm on the paid listening program there, and I figured I couldn't, in good conscience, not provide that to patrons. So even if you subscribe for $1 a month, you get an extra episode every week. And over and above what I actually give you for subscribing, I need listeners' help to help me grow this show. I need to improve the sound quality. I need to buy some more equipment. Nothing too expensive, but a little bit of support will go very, very far to help me get a new microphone and some stuff so I can record more clearly. And I'm going to put something into words that I don't think I've ever put onto an episode before. I would really like to do this full time, ultimately. The advantages of living in South Africa is we have quite a low basic cost of living. I don't need a lot of dollars to be able to earn a living and support my family. That's a lot more than I'm getting at the moment, but it won't take a lot for me to be able to do this. Ultimately, if I could do this full time, I could do 2 episodes a week available to everybody, and the bonus stuff as well. So if you'd like to see this grow and would like me to produce more and help more people, help you more, I would like you to consider signing up to the Patreon. At $1 a month is helpful to me. $5 a month is extremely helpful for me. If I could start covering my costs and start working towards growing the show, it would make me so happy, and I could help you, the listener, and hundreds of other people fairly regularly. So if you can, if you have a little bit of space in your budget, $1 a month, $5 a month, it really, really, really will help a lot. It will help me, it will help you, and it will help the other listeners who maybe aren't able to contribute. And if you can't, don't even worry about it. I'm still going to carry on with this for quite a while, even if it's not covering its costs, because I enjoy it, and I like helping people. And if you don't have much money to spare, but have give me a little bit of support in a way you can, listen to the show on Radio Public. It's a very good app, which also helps discoverability and helps pay money directly to your favorite shows. And I've also got, like any podcast, I've also got my Audibletrial, which if you use my link, audibletrial.com/sleepytime, I get actually from one sign up enough money to cover my costs for a month. If I can get a few sign-ups, it would make a huge difference, and I could start doing my equipment upgrade. And this doesn't cost you anything. You hit that link, you sign up for a 30-day free trial, you get a free audiobook to keep, and so you gain, and it costs you nothing if you cancel your subscription before the end of your first month. Also, swing by and take a look at the website. sleepytimetales.net. I've got affiliate links there. I've got a little tip jar if you want to just make a little contribution. There's a lot of ways you can help contribute, even if it's not necessarily giving me money directly. Sustainability is not too far away. It just takes a little bit of support from you, the listener. As always, the music in this episode is Un Désert by Kumiku. Their music is available on the Free Music Archive. I've linked their website and their Patreon in the show notes, as there's some very cool stuff that's worth looking at, and I highly recommend them to other content creators and podcast creators for something, if you want something unusual to put in the background. Just check the licenses carefully, but a lot of the stuff is public domain and free for commercial use. So what exactly is Sleepy Time Tales, and what is a sleep podcast? To answer your question, let me start with a common problem. Do you find yourself lying awake at night, mind spinning in emotions in turmoil with anxieties of 21st century life? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and find yourself not quite able to doze back off at 3 a.m.? I'm here to help. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator, here to talk you into a restful night. I'm someone who I've basically always struggled to sleep ever since I was a baby. I gave my parents sleepless nights for many, many years, and even once I got old enough where I didn't have to bother them anymore, it was always a struggle for me. It still is a struggle for me, and I'm 39 years old. It was actually only fairly recently that I discovered that there's a tendency when I'm listening to droning male voices in the middle of the night that I just sometimes just fall asleep like I've been sedated. I started actually listening to podcasts, sometimes for the specific purposes of falling asleep. I used to listen to mostly video game podcasts like Idle Thumbs, the backlog of shows like that. And I'd find myself waking up halfway through the night, and who knows how many episodes into what I was listening to. Eventually, though, I found out that sleep podcasts are a thing. I tried one that was quite special. It was specially designed for the purpose of distracting the restless mind, and it worked very, very well for me. But while it was a great success with me, when I recommended it to other people, a lot of them didn't like the narrator's voice. As I say, I liked it, but it just put some people off, and while there was nothing else quite like it that I could find, I figured maybe I should give it a try and see how it works out, do something similar, and see if my boring, drony voice would make an alternative for other people. And so here we are, episode 26 of my attempt to see how it works out. Every episode starts out with this long intro. I know there's some people that don't like the long intros, and for them I provide the timestamps so that if you find them off-putting, you can skip straight to the story. But it's very important that I put them in the episodes, because I have heard from a number of listeners and the importance of it for them, that this intro it's here for a reason. For new listeners, if it's your first time with us, here is where I explain to you the whole purpose of the show, what I'm hoping to achieve, and how I think it will be helpful for you to engage with it. And once I've done that, for you, it will also be become part of, it'll either work for you or it won't. And if it does work for you, it'll become part of your sort of nighttime prep. You put on the intro and let it run in the background as maybe you brush your teeth and have some water and get yourself into bed. Make sure your bedroom is nice and dark and not too hot, and you wrap yourself nice and warmly in your blankets, and prepare yourself for the whole experience of falling asleep. Now, the whole idea here is that together we create new habits for you, new sort of rituals and processes for helping yourself sleep, and sort of create a space, a comfortable mental and emotional nest for you to sleep in. The basic idea is that you listen to me fairly closely as I tell you tonight's story. For some people may not want to listen too closely, maybe turn the volume down and just let me drone in the background. You've got to find something that works for you. But that, on some level, you're engaging with the story that I'm telling, and it's holding your attention just enough that your mind doesn't spin and churn, as I say in the beginning. It's, for a lot of us, when we try to settle down at night, our mind spins with the strains of our life and things that bother us and have been sitting in our subconscious since we were kids. It's just part of the human nature, I guess, is these things come and haunt us while we are trying to sit in the dark and wander off to sleep. But you listen to the story, it stops your mind from spinning, keeps you a little bit focused without completely engaging you, because my basic concept with these stories is that the idea is interesting, but the actual execution isn't. I'm telling you stories and legends and sci-fi stories and fantasies and who knows what else I'm going to come up with. But ultimately, I'm just droning in the background, and the story is actually not as exciting as you may think. So that is, I'm basically just droning in the background, and the initially interesting story isn't as exciting as maybe you hoped. So tonight I'm going back to an event from mythology. I'm going to some traditional Norse or Scandinavian mythology, something that has been co-opted and changed and modified through the centuries. It's stories of the Valkyries, and specifically the story of Brunhilda, the most famous of the Valkyries. While the stories originally initiate in Norse and Scandinavian societies, they were appropriated or grew at one stage into Germanic legends. Very famous operas by Wagner involved Valkyries and the coming of the Ragnarok and the ring of the Nibelungs, the dwarves, who were the great craftsmen of the ancient Vikings. Unfortunately, being Germanic, these stories are also quite popular with neo-Nazis and the sort. But I grew up with Norse mythology. I think the first time I discovered a book of Norse myths, I was probably 7 or 8 when I found something in the school library. I was definitely far too young for these stories. I didn't realize how, well, myths generally are quite violent and disturbing, and Norse myths particularly have a really sort of disturbing bent. The story of the Valkyries and Brunhilda, while it has a little bit of a dark overtone, is not the most bizarre, so it seems fairly safe for this, especially now since I know sometimes children listen. So I'm going to try and make this something a little bit interesting, but not too freaky for them. And for pretty much anyone. I mean, we don't need to hear some of the more disturbing things when we're trying to get some sleep. But the whole idea is, whatever the subject of the story is, you just basically keep a light mental grip on my voice. Don't try to force yourself to sleep. Don't stress out about sleep. Just listen to me tell the story, and ultimately you're going to drift off into the dark and have a good night's sleep. Well, I'm hoping that you're asleep before the end of the episode, but it's important you don't feel pressurized. If this is your first night with us, this may not work for you. It may take a few nights for you to get used to my voice or my accent, or start developing that new habit, that new ritual that we're trying to get into, of you creating a space and a mindset for sleep. It's possible that especially if this is your first episode, one isn't long enough, so queue up a few and just let them run and see how it goes. But it is very important. The most important thing of all is that you try to relax. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights staring at the ceiling, it may take a few days for this to work for you. So queue it up or run through the backlog. What I do with sleep podcasts is I basically just let them run all night. I've got a few episodes that I just have a playlist, and I just go from the latest episode and run through. And then if I wake up at 3 a.m., the podcast is still running, and I just carry on listening. Sometimes my alarm goes half an hour, or rather I wake up half an hour before my alarm goes, and just carry on listening, and sometimes I fall asleep for another 30 minutes, and often that 30 minutes is the best part of my night. So you have the basic idea. You relax and you lie in the dark, and while you do that, I tell you a tale. So relax, my dear listener, my nighttime friend who's elected to lie in the dark, listening to my voice. The one thing I'm going to promise you is, this may or may not work for you, but the one thing that I will always promise is that you will be safe with me. I'm here to try to help you relax, to help improve your life in a small way, or to make a small contribution to a major improvement in your lifestyle. Hopefully after tonight, when you wake up tomorrow morning, you can face the next day better rested and better able to cope. I believe very strongly in kindness. My whole thing is I try to be kind to you, the listener. I don't share overly disturbing stories, and basically, especially the stories that I make up, are all about kindness and warmth and joy. I want to be kind to you. I want to share kindness with you. And most importantly, I need you to be kind to yourself. If you struggle to sleep, with or without me here in your ears, I feel it's very important that you just don't rebuke yourself. Don't get tense. If you get frustrated, it's just going to make your life more difficult. Frustration is one of the great enemies of a good night's sleep. I'm trying to prevent that frustration. Just distract your mind just a little bit, so that, all of us have been in that cycle where you can't sleep and you're getting frustrated and you're angry with yourself, and you can't sleep and you're getting more frustrated. And let's be real, that's not going to help at all. You're going to be watching the sunrise through bloodshot eyes, because none of that helps. Don't blame yourself. Don't get frustrated. Take a breath and forgive yourself. Let my voice wash over you, and take another breath. Imagine yourself slowly drifting into the warm darkness, sleep reaching out to you with inviting arms, and your life improving tomorrow because after a good night's sleep, life really is better. And if you can't let go and in the morning you're watching the sunrise again after a rough night, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself and we'll try again tomorrow. If you've had a life of insomnia, this can be a slow process to change. As I say, it's about habits and rituals and creating new ones after a lifetime of destructive mental habits. If you've had insomnia for a while, sleep feels like an enemy, but it's not. It's something we do. It's something designed into us, but because of stress and strain and concerns about life and our future and devices that shine blue lights in our eyes at all hours, it becomes something distant, even though it should be really natural to us. I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. And so if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course, you aren't hearing me, except maybe in a dream. Valkyries and the tragedy of Brunhilda. Now, those of us who know anything about Norse mythology know that the Norse greatly venerated warriors, and anyone who fell in battle was considered to be a hero. Now, the common stories we hear about, if you follow the mythologies at all, is that the souls of the fallen heroes get collected and taken to Asgard. Now, in the aftermath of a great battle, there are, according to some stories, only half of the fallen go to Asgard and serve Odin. The other half go to the Folkvang, the realm of the goddess Freya, the Norse goddess of the death and love. The followers of Freya were among the first practitioners, while Freya herself was among the first practitioners of magic among the gods. She was the first shaman who practiced rites that she then passed on to the humans who followed her. Not many people know the stories of the Folkvang. It is only mentioned twice in all the recorded Norse literature, so not many people really know about it. Nobody knows how the selection of the souls of the warriors take place. All fallen warriors are heroes, and some apparently go to Asgard, and some go to the Folkvang to serve Freya. Now, those who more famously go to Asgard, they spend most of their time celebrating and drinking and carousing and having a good old time, and they spend the rest of their time training for Ragnarok, the oncoming apocalypse, the twilight of the gods, which will see the end of the world. But we're not here tonight to learn too much about what happens in Asgard, or try to figure out what the Folkvang is and learn more about Freya. We are here tonight to learn about the Valkyries. Now, the most recent representation of a Valkyrie in popular culture, of course, is the character Valkyrie from Thor Ragnarok and Avengers Endgame, played rather wonderfully by Tessa Thompson, and she's a very fun character with a long comics history, which I don't know very much about because I don't know all that much about comics. But the character Valkyrie is one of a group of Valkyries. Basically, the Valkyries were the shield maidens of Odin. They were warriors who protected and supported him and helped him out in battle. Just as a little aside here, remember in Lord of the Rings, if you've read or watched that, Eowyn of the Rohirrim refers to herself as a shield maiden. Well, Tolkien himself made up the stories of in the Lord of the Rings and most of the stuff that he wrote. He was trying to build a mythology for England. He felt that English mythology was rather weak and didn't really not much of it actually survived Roman occupation and what we refer to as the Dark Ages. Most learning that was saved through this Dark Ages went through the monasteries and the churches. So obviously the older mythologies and legends didn't survive this. A lot of the Lord of the Rings concepts of the Lords of the Rings were actually based on various Scandinavian myths. So there are a lot of parallels between Scandinavian Norse mythologies and Lord of the Rings, and even successors of Lord of the Rings. One thing I mentioned in the intro was how popular Viking mythology is among neo-Nazis and white supremacists. It's rather unfortunate, but the sort of Viking mythologizing of great warriors and apparently looking a lot like the sort of idealized European person sort of appeals to a certain type, which unfortunately means a lot of the iconography and stories are kind of tainted by modern abuse, basically. One of the things about the myth of the Valkyries has created the idea that the Vikings, it wasn't unheard of for Viking women to be warriors. There has even been certain graves found of apparent female warriors in near Viking settlements. While over time it's emerged that maybe not so many of those were either women, because the bodies were not well preserved, or even if they were buried with weapons, they weren't generally used weapons. It seems like a possibility that axes that they were often buried with were actually more representational, or even possibly represented housework. Because thinking about it, Viking women, Norse women, while the men were away, a Viking would have been doing chopping wood and stuff. So it's possible that the axe was even considered to be something of a domestic tool rather than a weapon. Many of the weapons in the female graves are unblemished. There is one body, however, that was buried with arrowheads and other weapons, which suggests more that she really was a warrior, but it's not as common as some think. And of course, you mustn't consider that stories of Valkyries represented anything in real life, because the Norse also had stories about elves, dragons, and trolls, and so obviously a female warrior isn't as unlikely as a dragon. Maybe Viking culture wasn't quite as progressive as people like to make it out. So anyway, the Valkyries, they were the shield maidens of Odin. They were mostly armed with spears like their master. Odin himself carried a great spear. At the end of battle, they chose the bravest of the warriors that had fallen in battle to take to Asgard. Asgard was the great hall of Odin, where, as I mentioned, the souls of the warriors would spend their nights drinking and feasting and celebrating, and they would spend their days training and preparing. They were the greatest warriors already, and they would be even greater by the time Ragnarok came around, and the giants rose, and the sea serpent, and the sky wolf, and everything. I forgot to look up any of the Ragnarok stuff. Came to destroy the world and bring down the gods and humans. Valkyrie, the actual term Valkyrie, translates as chooser of the slain. Most Valkyries were considered to be somewhat interchangeable. Not many of them actually even are named in any of the mythologies. And even going to like the movie Thor Ragnarok and the comic character of Valkyrie, her name and job title are pretty much synonymous. Valkyrie isn't a name, but it's how she's referred to in, as far as I know, pretty much all the media. Some were given names, but it's thought that the names and the titles may be considered interchangeably. Not every Valkyrie who was given a name was actually called by that, the names usually had meanings of some kind anyway, so maybe that was more of a title than a name. There is, however, one rather famous name among the Valkyries in Norse mythology, and their name resonates through Germanic myths and even right through to the 19th century and the operas of Wagner. This is the famous Valkyrie named Brunhilda. She is actually most famous in the 21st century thanks to the operas that in which she was a major character, The Ring Cycle by Richard Wagner. It's possible even that her name originated from Brunhilda Austrasia, who was a Visigoth princess. Brunhilda was a ruler in the eastern Frankish kingdoms. While she didn't rule herself, she was the regent for 3 male rulers through the 6th and 7th centuries, including her own great-grandson. So she stuck around quite a while. Things didn't end well for her ultimately at the end of the day. She met a sticky end that, if you're interested in, you can go look it up, but I'm not going to go into any detail here because it's rather disturbing and I don't want to keep you awake. But like the real Brunhilda, the Brunhilda of Norse and Germanic mythology is a rather tragic figure. Early in her life, she offended Odin greatly by helping out another warrior who she had actually committed to because he basically blackmailed her into helping him. So even though she didn't want to, she helped the other warrior against Odin, who was greatly offended, and he sentenced her to sleep forever in a glass castle surrounded by a ring of fire. The only thing that would waken her would be a man brave enough to come to her and wake her with a kiss. I don't know if this is the origin of the Sleeping Beauty myth, or it's just a sort of parallel development, or maybe they went the other way around. I'm honestly not sure. But yeah, the beautiful and ferocious Brunhilda was sentenced to sleep and left to wait to be saved by any man brave enough to try. The legend of the beauty of Brunhilda spread far and wide. One of the people that heard about it was the great Norse hero Sigurd, who in the Ring Cycle in Germanic mythology is known more as Sigmund. Sigurd and his friend Gunnar came looking for the legendary Brunhilda. Sigurd didn't know it at the time, but in his youth he'd actually known and he'd loved Brunhilda. But he had been put under a spell and he'd forgotten about her, and he was now married to his bride Gudrun. And the Gunnar that Sigmund was traveling with was the brother of his wife Gudrun. So one day Gunnar decided he wanted to find himself a beautiful bride, and he persuaded Sigurd to go with him on a quest to find the glass castle surrounded by flames with the beautiful Valkyrie Brunhilda. Gunnar and Sigurd travelled far and wide. They rode their horses a great distance, and when they eventually got to the glass castle. The castle shone in the sunlight, almost blinding them, but even brighter than the light of the castle were the flames that surrounded it. They got up, slowed down their horses, dismounted, and had a good long look at what was in front of them. Gunnar now was thinking maybe this wasn't the best of ideas. He was a brave warrior, but I don't know if we can judge him too much for not wanting to go through the ferocious flames. We're not talking about a little candle flame here. We're talking about a moat filled with fire, probably volcanic in heat. I don't know now, Sigurd. I really don't know if I can get through these flames. Even if I was brave enough to step into them, I'd go up like a campfire all on my own. Sigurd tried to help Gunnar out and try to pump him up a bit. I don't think the gods would give a totally impossible task. It would take a brave warrior to step into those flames. I don't think they would make them so hot that the warrior would be completely consumed by them. This isn't a battle. They're not going to kill off a great warrior before a battle because they need us to go to Asgard. So I'm pretty sure that it'll be a safe walk for you. Why don't you just try it and see how it goes? Gunnar, though, he was a great warrior, but he wasn't very brave in the face of really strange things. And there's a part of me that doesn't really blame him very much. You're talking, looked like Bunsen burner flames that were so hot that they'll just melt you completely. So his heart melted and he was too afraid to go through. Sigurd, though, said, I would be willing to go through, but firstly, I'm married to your sister, so I can't go in there and pick up a sleeping Valkyrie for you. And in addition to that, she will probably love the person who wakes her up, so if it's not you waking her up, she won't be very interested in you. Gunnar, though, would not be swayed, and he was not willing to step into those flames. Gunnar's sister, though, Gudrun, had a bit of magic skill, and she had taught Gunnar a bit of a interesting spell. Gunnar had the ability to swap the two men's appearances, so that Sigurd could step through the flames while basically wearing Gunnar's face. Sigurd was a good friend, not the brightest, but he had a good heart, and he was willing to help his friend out, and so he agreed to it. Gunnar cast the spell, and their faces moved. I'm not sure exactly how it would have done, probably more something like a glamour, sort of shimmered and their faces changed. Sigurd took his weapons, looked dead in the flame, said, "Okay, Gunnar, my good friend, I'm going to go get a bride for you." He stepped straight into the flames. There was a little bit of heat, but he was right. The point of the flames was to scare people, not hurt them. Particularly anyone brave enough to step into them would be a great asset to Odin and Asgard in the time of Ragnarok. So Sigurd just walked through the flames quite calmly. He got into the glass castle and he wandered up to the high tower room where Brunhilda was sleeping. He bent down to give her a kiss to wake her, and he did. He kissed her on the lips, her eyes opened, and she gave him a smile. "Thank you, brave warrior, for coming to rescue me. What is your name?" "My name's..." He nearly gave the wrong name. That would have been a big mistake. "My name is Gunnar, and I have come to rescue you and make you my bride." Now, of course, the 21st century, that sort of thing is not very progressive. But, let's just accept it for what it is. It's a story of its time, about gods and monsters, so let's just roll with it. Brunhilda was very grateful to Gunnar or who she believed was Gunnar, for waking her, and so she agreed to his proposition. They held hands and they walked out of the castle. The flames died out as they neared, or they died out once Brunhilda woke, because the curse was ended. She was quite surprised, though, when she walked out to the castle and they crossed the moat. There was Sigurd, who she'd known before and who had loved her and who she loved. She was quite surprised at the fact that he didn't seem to know her at all, and he welcomed her as his new sister-in-law, because she was marrying his brother-in-law, the brother of his wife. Now, Brunhilda was a little bit confused about the situation, but at the end of the day, Gunnar had been brave enough, as far as she believed, to come and wake her, so she continued with her commitment to marry the great warrior, or what she believed to be the great warrior. They went back to their settlement and they planned the great wedding. Now, unfortunately, Brunhilda and Sigurd, who, remember, looked like Gunnar, didn't really get any chance apart. They were kept together quite a long time. So Sigurd couldn't sneak off and go swap faces back with Gunnar so that she would be marrying the correct person. He maintained the charade for quite a while, up to and including the wedding night. So Brunhilda married who she believed was Gunnar. On their wedding night, when obviously they're supposed to seal the deal, Sigurd wasn't going to do anything to the woman who believed she'd married somebody else. So he insisted that on the first night of the wedding they sleep with a sword in between them, so that as a sort of blessing on their wedding. Thinking about it now, what kind of excuse would he have been able to come up with? Sorry, I'm married to you, one of the most beautiful women in the world, but I don't want to touch you tonight, and we're going to put a sword between us, so if things get too frisky, we're going to get cut. Strange thing to do. No wonder how he managed to get that excuse to work out. But anyway, the night passed largely without incident. The next morning, he managed to get himself alone with Gunnar for a while, and they swapped their faces back. So Gunnar went back to Brunhilda, and at first she didn't realize anything was different. They carried on their married lives. But after a while, she started to become disillusioned with her husband. Obviously, the Gunnar, who was too scared to go through the flames to come to meet her, would have a pretty different demeanor to the Sigurd, who had gone through the flames to rescue her. So she started to get suspicious. Gunnar was a warrior and I think a fairly good man, if a bit of a coward. But again, I'm not sure if you can really blame someone for just like not wanting to walk through searing flames for a story, because there was no certainty that it would end well one way or the other. She eventually got suspicious, and she knew something was up, because Sigurd still didn't recognize her at all, despite the fact that they had loved each other when they were younger. And she started to suspect that there'd been some kind of magical interference. Now, Brunhilda, let's remember, was beautiful and ferocious. She was a great Valkyrie, a shield maiden of Odin. So when she realized she'd been deceived, her fury was great. She decided that she wasn't going to accept this. Her heart was broken by Sigurd not recognizing who she was, and she realized the deception, how he had come and fetched out the flames, made her think he was a brave Gunnar. Meanwhile, Gunnar was a coward. So she arranged to have Sigurd slain. Can't remember the exact process of it. I think she got Gunnar to do the dirty deed. Now, Gunnar wasn't quite as great a warrior as Sigurd was, so it would probably have been something of a sneak attack when the time came. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Sigurd was slain, and he was cremated on a great funeral pyre. Brunhilda suddenly realized that she wasn't very happy with how this had worked out. She was very remorseful. She still loved Sigurd. It's almost twice over. She loved him from when they were younger, and she loved him from waking her up, even though he had worn the face of Gunnar at the time. So the story of Brunhilda ends tragically, as even the ferocious Valkyrie, in her heartbreak, threw herself on the funeral pyre of Sigurd the warrior. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Sleepytime Tales podcast, the podcast that is designed around a bedtime story to help you get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to subscribe in whatever service that you use so that you can get new episodes and maybe even the odd bonus whenever they come out. A reminder that the music for tonight is Un Desert by Kumiku. Check out more of their work on their website and their Patreon, which you will find linked in the show notes. Good night and sweet dreams.